Let's turn to another hot-button topic, gun control. The president has been all over the map this week on where he stands in the wake of mass shootings in Texas and Ohio.
I have an appetite for background checks. We're going to be doing background checks. We have background checks, but there are loopholes in the background checks, and that's what I spoke to the NRA about yesterday. At the same time, I don't want to take away people's Second Amendment rights.
Anita wrote in Politico that President Trump has baffled lawmakers and advocacy groups for weeks with his comments. Democrats on the campaign trail have tackled the issue.
When the president, even this president, says he's going to do something about background checks, and then word comes out today that he has consulted with his masters at the NRA and they've told him, sorry, you can't do that, it raises the very simple question, who's in charge?
Once again, Anita, we're asking you that question a lot tonight. Who's in charge?
Let me tell you what I'm hearing from the White House. It seems as if they're going back and forth, or that he's going back and forth. But let me tell you, the president, well, he is going back and forth, but the president wants to put out a plan. And he's getting pressured from both sides, right? Obviously, he is so worried about losing his supporters and his base and having gun control that would be very, very strong. And so he's looking at that and he's thinking, what can I do? I want to be the one that after these two mass shootings that comes up with something and finally gets something done. And so he's looking at more minor things. His language was very confusing, but what he is going to be doing is putting out a plan when Congress comes back, and it will include changes to background checks, not perhaps universal background checks. He's not going to say more people should get checked when they're making a purchase, but he's going to say that the background check system is flawed, which it is, and that more federal agencies and more states should be putting records in there. So it's a way for him to say, hey, I'm doing background checks, but I'm not doing that big background check.
But Wayne LaPierre, the head of the NRA, Martha, is on the phone with President Trump this week saying, we don't support background checks, and they're one of the biggest supporters of the GOP.
And I think, I mean, that's so interesting what the White House is thinking and how they do that, and can he frame that in a way that doesn't offend the NRA? That, I mean, we've all heard him talk about it's the mentally ill. What do we do about that? Do we have an extra background check with that? And how they figure out how to do that. It's a pretty fine line, but I can see a way they probably could please the NRA and some of the constituents.
Is the NRA, Jim, in a weakened position? They've gone through spending scandals. Wayne LaPierre has cleaned house in terms of the board at the NRA.
You would expect that if there was a time in the last 10 or so years that the NRA would be weakened, this might be it. But certainly with this occupant of the White House, it doesn't seem that way. It seems like they still have a lot of influence. They're able to get him on the phone in a way that a lot of advocacy groups that I talk to wish that they could, probably. I think that they are definitely not what they were before these scandals hit, but it would be wrong to count them as anything less than a force in Washington right now.
What holds President Trump to the issue of gun control? Is it fear of losing the suburban voter in 2020?
I think this issue so encapsulates the difficult choice he has in his reelection campaign. On the one hand, he has to hold his base. I mean, that's stating the obvious, but he has to hold that base. And anything he might do to suggest he's moving toward a more, encompassing position on gun control puts that at risk. On the other hand, given what happened in 2018 and the degree to which the suburban vote moved against the Republicans, particularly suburban women, not to do something on an issue that enjoys overwhelming support among Democrats, independents, and Republicans, says to those voters, you don't count. I'm not listening to you. So he's going to try to come up with something that threads that needle.
And frame it in exactly that way,
yeah.
that could possibly please everyone.
He's getting pushed by so many Republicans, not his Trump Republicans, but other people saying you have this opportunity, take it, to get some of these, pick up some of these other voters, and to say I accomplished something. And so he's getting really pushed very hard.
But go to those rallies, you go to those
Yes.
rallies and you hear people at those rallies and you talk to those voters, and those voices are in his head as well, that we can't have any sort of gun control, and that would be a huge election issue, and that's what they'll tell you it will be. So
And not to bring everything back to the economy, but these are voters who you would think he would be extra sensitive to right now at a time when the economy is looking a little weaker because they have big economic concerns. In our polling, it's like 70% of independents who say they're worried about the national economy. So you would be, I would think, looking for ways to court those voters in some other way if you're worried that that economic base is kind of coming out from under them.
And who would want this in the Republican Party? Susan Collins up for re-election in Maine, Cory Gardner up for re-election in Colorado?
You would think that any senator who's up for re-election in a competitive race would like to see something done on this issue, although they've got similar problems.
What about Majority Leader Mitch McConnell up for re-election in Kentucky?
Well, we'll see what he does when they come back. You know, he's indicated, I guess, that he's interested in doing something, but how far he will go, I don't know.
Is Ivanka Trump a force in this debate inside of the White House?
Well, she is calling members of Congress, and she is working on the issue. She met with her father about it. But I'm hearing from people that on Capitol Hill, some of these Republicans don't want her to be involved because, you know, her father calls her liberal, calls her a Democrat. That's not someone they actually want to work with when they're up for re-election. It's not going to look good for them. So while she is out there doing things, there's some people that wish she wasn't.
Could this end up as a red flag law, Martha, something that's a little watered down?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, that might be the kind of thing it could end up being. Is that red flag law? And sort of just from his rhetoric the past week, that sounds like it would be more likely something he would do.
You know this about the president, but sometimes when he's out there talking about tax cuts, universal background checks, all different things, he's waiting to see what people think. He goes and watches television to see what people are saying about it. What are Republicans thinking about it? He wants to kind of put the ideas out there.
He's doing that with the economy as well.
Oh yeah, with
payroll
tax cut this week. For a while he was for it. And then he said he wasn't for it, and now we're not sure. He said that he'd be open to other tax cuts too, indexing capital gains for inflation. Then he said he was backing away from that.
What's next? In one word, what's coming next? One or two words on the economy?
Chaos.